Big dog.
What up, everybody? Happy hump day. We made it halfway through the week. Still got the rest of the week to go, but that just gives you more opportunity to make some money, make some connections, grow your business, all that kind of good stuff. And I feel kind of trapped right now. I got logos all around my face. I don't know if I like this. Probably going to change this. I tell you, I feel like I'm being crammed in to the space. Dude, what is it like, everybody, waiting an entire week to have coffee hour? You know, we used to have it every day for so long, and now it's once a week. Does that get you riled up to at least come once a week? I don't know. But I tell you what, it's different for me getting up every morning. I'm up and early. Today I was up early, but I got down into the studio and I realized that I didn't have everything loaded. And I was like, oh, crap. Plus, I was doing some other videos that y'all will see come out on our other platforms. And I did not realize that I had everything shut off. And I was like, what? Everything shut off. So I had to reactivate everything. But anyway, that's my problem, not your problem. Thanks for joining me here on Coffee Hour, where we talk about just about anything that has to do with the electrical industry. Interesting news. A recent report came out that over the next year, you're going to see commercial construction start to take a bit of a sharp dive. This is Construct Connect data that just came out. And so over the next year, it looks like, at least the economists that predict this stuff for Construct Connect look like you're going to see a bit of a dip in the commercial sector, but you're going to see a sharp increase in the residential sector. Now, many of us have probably been saying that for a long time. It's like, well, the residential, I mean, we keep reproducing, we keep creating space for people. So the residential should balance out. But what this tells me is that all of you out there that are over the next year, we're going to see a boom. You're going to see a hiring boom, but it's going to be tight pickings for some of the big commercial projects that aren't already in the queue, which are already in the middle of the process, that are going to take the next couple of years. That they should be okay. You might see a little bit of a dip in based on the numbers. And the numbers from Construct Connect are actually based on people that have already pulled permits and things are in place. So it's a pretty good forecaster. But you're going to see where you're going to see the commercial permitting and all drop. You're going to see the residential spike. So it's going to offset each other a little bit. We say residential, we don't just mean one family, two family. We mean commercial, light commercial, which would fall into the residential, whereas the individual dwelling units in a multifamily building, that type of stuff. So I don't necessarily put that in the commercial bundle, if you will, but you're going to see a bit of a dip, and hopefully we can get out of that quickly as possible. But it looks like it is going to be a slight dip over the next year, 2026, a little bit on the commercial sector. Residential is going to spike. So if you're a residential guy or you're doing commercial that does the residential type of scenario, then you're going to see that the multifamily stuff is going to be fine. It's that pure commercial outlay stuff is going to probably drop a little bit. But at the end of the day, a lot of these projects are already in the scope. So I shouldn't expect us to see too much of a bump, in my opinion, in 2026. Anyway, enough of that. Paul playing the forecaster. Good thing I don't mess in the stock market because, again, I'm just saying. Oh, did y'all see that Disney stock took a tank? It's coming back. People, everybody says it's due to stuff that people said on late night shows. It's not. The problem with Disney is nobody can afford to go to the freaking park anymore. Cost you a small mortgage to even go to the park. It's a beautiful thing. I love Disney. But again, at the end of the day, if it's going to cost you a freaking fortune, I saw a thing where it was a family of four. They went to the park for a day trip, and it was over like $1,500. Like, who can do that, right? I mean, just to go to the park, that's crazy. But I also heard that the lines, if you're down in Florida, I heard that the lines are like nothing at the rides and stuff. So there's an upside for those that like to go to the park. Okay, no waiting, that type of stuff. All right, folks. What other news do we got going on? We do have some news that we'll talk about on our front. Y'all seen some turmoil here for us in the last 2 weeks. Site went down, site's back up, announcements about message boards and forums, all this kind of turmoil. So let me just get it all back to center. Yes, we did change our servers. Yes, we did increase the capacity. Yes, we did add a forum, which I'll show you that today. But that's not the topic of the day. The topic of the day is we're going to be talking about a simple calculation. So hopefully you've got your calculators handy. A simple calculation when it comes to all electric restaurants. And of course, we'll talk about when they're not all electric and what the National Electrical Code says about that. And exciting is we're going to use the 2026 because in this case, nothing really changed. Only thing that happened is that now everything's moved to Chapter 1, 120 for calculations, but the core principles didn't change. So I figured why not dabble and start learning the new code sections and new code references in the 2026. Might as well get an early start, right? For many of you, it's going to be a year or so or more before you even see the 2026, much less the 2023. But hey, it's fun. Why not just shake it up a little bit here on Coffee Hour? As you remember now, share it with other people. Coffee Hour is now Wednesdays. And I say Coffee Hour. I did not change the name to Coffee Hours, Adam. But I did extend the time, 8 to 9:30. So hopefully that gives you a little more time to cover different topics. And also don't forget Fast Tracks Tube is still here. Subscribe and join. Watch the videos on Fast Tracks Tube. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. So first things first, let's talk about calculations for an exam. So sometimes on electrical exams, you're going to get calculations. And we're also going to do shout outs here in a second to those that make it here. And talk about how you can make recommendations for future shows and where we're going to have you do that to simplify everything. We'll show you all that here in just a second. But today we're going to be talking about a simple calculation. And the calculation is, we see this on exams, we see this on the Texas exam, is when you do a calculation for a new restaurant, you have two choices. Obviously, you always have choices. You can calculate that out using part 3 of 120 or of 220 if you're in the 2023, 2020, and 2017. You can do it using the normal methods for your branch circuits in part 2 and then calculate it out in part 3 and do your normal calculation. You can do that. If it's a new restaurant, you're allowed to use part 4, which is the optional method. And in the optional method, you're basically just gathering all of your loads together. That's heating and air conditioning, everything. And you gather all those loads together, and then you apply. You take that connected load, and then you apply, and you come up with a calculated load. And you size everything based on the calculated load, that type of thing. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today. If you got any questions regarding that, please, by all means, share them in the chat. We're on all of our normal platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Fast Tracks Tube. I assume that's running. And of course, if you're over on TikTok and you want to join us for the live stream, do me a favor, jump on over to one of those social platforms and you can join us. We do not answer questions or interact with TikTok really during the sessions. That's a behind the scenes scenario, that type of thing. So again, that's what we're going to do today. So let's go on, and I will give shout outs in a second. One of the things we're changing, we'll move those a little later into the show. But let's go on and get into the code. So let's see here. If I can get to full screen. So here we are, code over. If anybody can't hear me or any point something drops out, please let me know. All right, so here you can see we're going to be looking at the 2026. If you're in the 2020 or 2023 edition, you're going to be in 220, Article 220. But we're just kind of dabbling a little bit today. What's up, Alex? Well, we're dabbling a little bit today. Alberto, I see you in here. We're going to be in the 2026 just to look. Okay, so here we are. We're going to be in 120, which is 220 in your 2023 and 2020 and 2017. We're going to click in there. And you see here M. Again, M just means it's been moved. Okay. In case you wonder what this means. Oh, by the way, it is not out, I don't believe, on the printed edition. It's right now, it's just out on Link. So if you've got Link, enjoy. All right, so let's go down. So we're under the optional methods. Okay. And we'll get down here and we're going to be talking about new restaurant right here. All right, so let's close this down so you can see the whole thing. All right, so what does it say now? You see here, obviously it's changed from 220 to 120. Okay. I'm just getting you used to it, folks. Relax. Calm down. Just get you used to it. All right. So it says calculations of a service and feeder loads, where the feeder serves the total load for a new restaurant, shall be permitted in accordance with table 120.88. That's it right here. In lieu of Article 120, Part 3, which is the same as Article 220, Part 3. Go with me? Okay. So what this means is that I can use this optional to do the service, but I can also use it to do the feeder, where the feeder serves the total load. In other words, what we mean by that is I could have these service equipment outside, and now the only thing that's coming into the building or the restaurant is now feeders, because the service conductors are all outside. Okay. And that's very common in a lot of these commercial restaurant applications. So they'll put it all outside, usually in a big bank out back of the building or whatnot. And then now it's feeding a feeder panel inside. If that's the case, okay, where that feeder is going to serve the entire load of that restaurant, so mainly it might be just a disconnect outside. If that's the case, where that service disconnects outside and now it feeds the panel inside, if that's the case, then we can use this optional method. Okay. All right. Or I could use Part 3 if I want, and that is no different than we would with any other building. Now, on most exams, they're going to tell you the total connected load. Okay. And that means that the engineer, design professional, whomever, have literally taken the nameplates from everything. Luminaires, you don't take the wattage from the lamp. You take whatever the maximum output is of the luminaire. They take everything, added it all together, and came up with what we call a total connected load in kVA. All right, and they'll share that for you. So in the exams, typically the Texas exam, and I'm pretty much the same everywhere else, they will give you a value for the total connected load. Now, if I was writing this for an exam, I might give you the lighting. I might give you all of the loads individually, right? Just list them out, maybe a oven, a range, a cookie, whatever it is, with the understanding that that there's a note underneath this table. And this note is saying, look, just take everything, add it all up. Also, take the heating and the air conditioning, just add it all up. And that is going to be your total connected load, okay? Remember, calculated load is a load value after we've applied some type of demand. The connected load is just everything, okay? Simple. All right, so that's what we got there. So let's kind of go to where we're at here for the restaurant. Okay, so that's what we've got. Okay. Now, it also goes on to say that the overload protection for the service conductors shall be in accordance with 230.90, that is overload requirements, and 240.4, okay, that's conductor protection. Okay, all of those rules have to be followed. It says feeder conductors, where applicable, shall not be required to be greater ampacity than the surface conductors. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? If we size the load and we size the surface conductors for that load, then there's no need for that feeder to be larger than the surface conductors, right? Makes sense, right? I mean, equal to size. There would be no need for me to have a service size conductors of one size and then have feeders that are larger. It wouldn't make sense to do that, okay? Now, it says service or feeder conductors whose calculated load, this is calculated load down here, okay, is determined by this optional calculation shall be permitted to have the neutral load determined in 120.61, which was 220.61, and which is 220.61 in your 2023, 2020, and 2017, and therefore. Now, the reason it makes this statement is because the neutral calculation is not found in the optional method. It's found at the end of part 3, which is the typical normal we call standard method. So in order to get over into part 3, since I'm working in part 4, I have to have something that gets me over into part 3 to use the neutral calculation, okay? So in that scenario, you're going to have to calculate all of the loads. You're not going to be able to use the optional method in order to size the neutral, okay? Because you need to know what all those neutral loads are. So even though you're going around as an electrician, let's say the real practical world, in the real world. In the real world, you're going to be gathering all of the nameplates. Again, you're going to be wiring all these things if it's an all-electric restaurant. So if this is only for new, by the way. So you should have a list, or somebody should be able to provide you a list of all of the equipment that's going in there, especially if it's all electric. I mean, you're installing it, right? So you have this list. So you can do a separate calculation, okay, just to find what the neutral minimum size of the neutral could be. Or you could be like a lot of engineers and they don't want to go through all that. And what I mean is they don't want to go through all that. And so they just make the neutral the same size as the ungrounded hot conductors and let it roll. Now that only becomes a problem if you've got a situation where you have a high harmonics, okay, which you're probably not going to have in an all electric restaurant. Okay, you're probably not going to have high harmonic, high distortion, things like that. So it's probably not going to be an issue, right? And so, and typically you're not going to have a lot of computers, whatever. You're not going to have more than 50% of harmonic loads in there. So probably not going to be an issue. And that's why most engineers that I've run into, when they're sizing for this, they don't want to go through all the garbage to size a neutral. They just say, look, just make the damn neutral the same size as the ungrounded and they just let her go. That's what they do, okay, majority of the time. But can they calculate it out? Absolutely they can. That's what they want to do. Okay. All right, that one's hard to see, so let's go to the NEC. All right, so here's where we got that there. Now, here's the table. Okay, now see it says permitted load calculation for service and feeder. So you can do it using part 3 of 120 or part 3 of 220 if you choose to do so. On an exam, unless they state otherwise, you use the standard method. But typically what I've seen is that they will allow you, they'll say using the optional method to do the all electric restaurant, and they will give you a total connected load. Whereas again, like I would do it, I would give you all the different loads and I would say, I'm not going to tell you this on an exam, but I would assume you're going to add them all up. Why is that? Why would I assume that? Well, because of the note. Let's look at this note right here. What does this note right here say? Okay, now remember, this is a note. This is not an informational note. It's a quick little lesson for folks. This isn't the informational note where it's like, it's just good information. No, this is germane to the table. Okay, so any note that's below a table, just like with ranges in 220.55 or 120.55 in the 2026 edition, those notes are very much part of the table. So you have to meet them. Okay, you have to utilize them. Whereas when we see informational note, that's just really good information. You can't use that to win any argument with an inspector. But at the end of the day, it's informational notes to me are just good roadmaps to send you to certain places in the code that you need to be. But these notes are very much applicable. And here's what it says. It says, add all electric loads. Add them all up. Couldn't be any easier than that, including both heating and cooling loads. So AC and heat, there is no issue here on the optional method of a non-coincident. Add all your loads up, okay? And then it says to calculate the total connected load, just everything, right? And like I said, a lot of times also on drawings, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I did some plan review. I don't know, David, if you've done any. I've done the plan review in the past on some restaurants, and the actual engineers had already calculated everything up. So what they gave us at the end was a total connected load. And then that was easy because once I had the total connected load, they're the engineer on record. They stamped it. I assume all I would do is go now and look at and see, did they apply the optional method or did they do this based on the standard? Because if they did the standard method, part 3, then I would expect to see a calculation, right? Other than just adding up all the loads, okay? I would say 9 times out of 10, they already calculated everything up and gave us a connected load, and then they showed us how they applied 120.88 or 220.88, depending on what code cycle you're in. And that's what they did. That's what I typically would see, okay? So here, it's the total connected load, okay? Add everything up. And then it says, select one demand factor that applies from the table, then multiply the total connected load by this single demand factor. Okay, all right, let's blow this out a little bit and see if we can see this. It's not the best in the world, but we'll maneuver through this thing. Okay, so let's see how this. So if I had an exam, get our calculators ready. And let's keep this simple because I will tell you what, I get tons of questions from people that took their exam, that got this question on the exam and they fumbled it. All right. It should seem like it's easy peasy, but we want to make sure, you know what? I don't like that view. So let's go back here. Tons of people who have fumbled this thing, and I want to make sure that you do not fumble this and get it right on an exam. Okay. So assuming that we give you a total connected load. So let's do that. Let's give us a total connected load. Let's say that I have 756 kVA. Right? Let me get my trusty notepad here, or a piece of paper out of my printer. That's my trusty notepad. All right. So I'll get my notepad here. For you, it'd be a scratch paper during the exam. So 756 kVA is what we're going to be working with. And that's what our total connected load was. That's 756,000 VA. Okay. And so that's basically adding everything up that's electric in this restaurant, right? So we've added everything up to come up with this total value, right? So the first thing you'll do is you'll come down here and decide, well, which one of these am I in? Which row? Am I in this one, this one, this one, this one? Well, obviously I'm in this one. So I'm between 326,000 VA and 800,000. Or, as we see here, the K, that stands for 1,000 VA, volt amperes. So it's 1,000 volt amperes. So 756 falls right in here. Now, the one thing you want to watch out for on the question is whether or not it's an all-electric restaurant or not all-electric restaurant. I can tell you right now, the KVA is going to be, obviously, this is a no-brainer. It's going to be less on a non-all electric. Okay. So if I were to scroll over a little bit, you'll see right here, not all electric. Okay. So in these values right here, it's going to be, the total value that the engineer gives you is going to be less because it's going to be not taking other types of loads into consideration that are like the gas and all this kind of stuff like that. Okay. What does David say? David makes his job too hard where he's at. He says, I critique the restaurant loads applied and would apply demand. I have a tangent that when it comes to, okay. All right. So you're working way too hard than you need to, David. I'm just saying. I tell electricians all the time, plans examiners all the time. Um, all the time, I tell them, like, look, I'm just a plans examiner. I'm not the engineer. I'm not the design professional. If the engineers designed it and stamped it, I'm just here to look at what they have. I'll look at the little pieces, but I'm not going to re-engineer the whole thing. That's not my job. Everybody's different. So I used to do that and scrutinize it. And as I got further in, I was like, no, you know what? They stamped it. It's their design. I'm not going to be liable for their design. I've changed some little things, but at the end of the day, I used to teach my plans examiners. I used to teach them and say, look, if an engineer says the total connected load is this, I'm not going to recalculate it. That's it. And then I will see whether or not they applied the optional method, that type of thing. But I do find little things all over the plans that can be corrected. But when it comes to the load calculation, I stay away from that part. Yeah, you're right, David. See, I would call out little things that I'd see where conductor sizing may be a little wrong or did something, that type of thing. But when it comes to the load calc, I do not re-engineer their load calc because the last thing I want is that on me. But yeah, I used to look for all kinds of little things that I could call them out on or have them fix or clarify, or I could cloud it and fix it. But when it came to the load calc, I did not try to do their load calc over again for them. I just didn't want the liability. And our lawyers for the municipality did not want me to take that liability. So they were like, no, engineer stamps it. Just look for the little things that they might have missed. Other than that, let her roll. Also, there was times on drawings that the spacing of receptacles and the multifamily dwellings didn't look like it was fine. And it used to be where I would go and measure every little piece and then add receptacles. And I got a stamp later that says all the receptacles of spacing you had to comply with 210.52a, That way I wasn't going through and adding all these little receptacles. That way my inspectors could call them out and they'd say, well, it wasn't on the drawings. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I had stamps that I had made up that I could stamp it that just CYA. Okay. And then my inspectors would do their normal inspection in the field. But yeah, I kind of migrated through the years and how I did plan review from Mr. Over Anal for the first 2 or 3 years in my career of doing that. And then I got better. But I'd say better. I just realized that I wasn't the design professional, that type of thing. It just made my life so much easier. But some AHJs may say, no, I want you to dig deep. Mine didn't. Mine did not want me to get that deep into it later on in my career when it comes to plans examiner. And then when I went to the city of Alexandria, we had really good inspectors. So we just would mark things and let them do it. What's up, Bill? I see you in the house, Bill. All right. Okay, so let's look back at this. So we said ours was 756, right? So we're like right in here. Now ours is all electric restaurant. So now we have to come up with the calculated load. And of course, that's what we're going to use to size our service conductors, our overcurrent protection, all this, our overload protection, 230.90, all that kind of stuff, right? All right, so let's go down here. We're right here. So this is where people get caught up in this exam question. Is they take it. So they would typically, it's very common for somebody to jump to this and see the 50% and say, well, I'm going to take 756,000 and I'm going to divide it by 50%. And they're going to get this answer. Okay. So I'll just take this 756,000 divided by 2 is 378,000. So they're like, dude, I'm done. It says 50%. But then they add the 172.5 to that. And then that's where they get wrong, right? That's where they'll get it wrong. And trust me, on the exam, there will be the answer there. There'll be an answer on the exam for 50% of whatever your KVA is. There'll be an answer on your exam for 50% plus the 172.5 KVA added to it. There'll be all the wrong answers and there'll be the one right answer, okay, on there. So here's how I want you to address this. So in our example, 756. Now, it says the 50% applies, and remember the old saying, do the parentheses first. When we do math, do all things in parentheses first. It's kind of the order of multiplication, order of mathematical process. So it says for the amount that's over 325. Okay, so 50% on the amount that's over 325. Then you add the 172.5 to it. This is what throws people on exams. Had a guy contact me the other day, same question. And he says, oh crap, I got it wrong. Hopefully you're not one of those folks that go, oops, I got it wrong because I missed it by one question. Hopefully that's not the folks, although you missed it by a lot more than one. And I want to get you in that mentality that, I can do much better. But at the end of the day, you could have passed if you were missing it by only one and you got this one wrong, because this is an easy one. All right. So they've already given you the connected load. All you're doing is working the math. So let's see here. So it was 756, right? So we're going to take that 756 and we're going to subtract 325 from that. Okay. So I'm going to minus 325 and that gives me 431, right? So 431 kVA is the amount that is over 325. Okay. The amount, that's over 325. Because if you add 431 and 325, then you get 756. Okay. All right. So that is the amount. So the amount that's over 325 is what you're going to apply the 50% to. Okay. So in this case, the amount over is 431. So I'm going to take 431, right? And I'm going to multiply that by 0.50, and that is 215.5. Okay. And if you don't believe that, then you can go 431 divided by 2, same thing. So that is 215.5, right? There's our math. Write your math down, okay? Plus 172.5 gets added to that. So I'm going to take that 215.5 plus 172.5. That equals 388 kVA. That is your answer, 388 kVA. Now, that is dramatically different than the 756, right? That's dramatically different than that. Okay. So again, it can affect different sizing, whatever you're doing, but that's the simple process. Is the first part is find your connected load. That's going to be given to you probably by the engineer. Design in a restaurant, it's probably not that many as-built on that. You're going to get something from a design professional for a restaurant. Look for that connected load. Once you get that connected load, then you come here, you go and choose the right area that it falls under. Ours fell under this one right here. And that was 50% of the amount that is over 325, and that was 431. So 431, 50% of that, which was 215.5, plus the 172.5, that came up with a total of 388. Okay. Now, I can promise you on an exam, you're going to have 756 with the 50% applied to it. And I think that's like 378, which is not the answer. It's close, but it's not the answer. But I can promise you on an exam, that will be one of the answers, right? Let's see here. Let's see. What else will be on there? I'm sure that it'll be that 378. That's at 50% of the 756. I can promise you that they'll take that 378 and then they'll also add this onto it, right? So that would be plus 172.5. That'd be 550.5. Okay. So I can promise you that that's what they'll add. They'll do that, right? Okay. What else? Let's see here. I'm sure that answer will be there. What else would they do? They're liable to also give you using this over here, right? And this is for a not all electric. Okay, so there might be gas, heat, gas, some other things that are not, everything in there is not 100% electric restaurant. And you would just use, so if it is like a pizza joint that uses a gas-fired ovens and stuff like that, then it is not all electric. And you come over here, use this side, that type of thing. Just that simple. What I don't want is the people to freak out on an exam when it comes to this, right? And make a mistake. Just remember is find the column that's connected, simple. Then go over if it's all electric, you're trying to solve for the calculated load. Determine what amount you're over what is given in the table. Like our case, it was the 50% applied to the amount that was over 325. Okay. So that amount that is over 325, which in our case was 431, 50% is applied to that. I think that got us down to 215.5. And then you add the 172.5 to it. That's the order of process when it comes to using the optional method. Now, could I use part 3? Could I use the standard calculation method? Yes, you could. And there's a distinct probability that it will result in a much larger service than you need. That type of thing. David says, I've been pulled back a few times to leave it up to the inspector where I would leave a FYI note on the, yep, yeah. I still gave direction to the inspectors, that's for sure. Luckily for me, I oversaw the inspectors as well, so they couldn't push back. They had to do what I tell them. But yeah, I came up with these little stamps that would just stamp every plan, but basically have my little pet peeves, right? Everything that I would have there in a list order, it would say spacing in accordance with the NEC, yada, 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 working clearances. It was a catch-all stamp that I would put on there. Yeah, in fact, if I remember right, I paid for that myself back after I realized that I was going to let the engineer do their job. I was going to look for things like conductor sizing because I was good at that. I could just look at a drawing and see stuff. But I ended up developing a stamp that I just would red stamp it and put it on the print. And that would be my catch-all. All those main little things, working clearances, receptacle spacing, yada, yada, yada. All that type of stuff. And I just developed that stamp for that. It made it easy, just boom. But yes, I did red cloud a lot of things when conductors weren't sized right or they didn't take certain loads into consideration. And sometimes it may have made a little difference, but it wouldn't have changed the overall load calc. So I don't worry about it. It's not going to matter, that type of thing. I certainly wouldn't have sent it back to have the engineer redo it because then that would cause us more grief. And you know how that works in a municipality. Anytime that we are over anal and we keep sending stuff back, if it's a big project or they're really close to the city or they do a lot of work for the city or whatever, then they start running their mouth. And so, we had to be very careful on how we did it. It's just politics. That's why I don't miss working for a municipality. It's the politics that are involved. You know what I'm saying? It just wasn't my thing. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? I'm more than happy to answer any questions on that type of calculation and what you're doing with that. I will show you. So, and just so you can see this, in the 2023, it is absolutely no different if we go down to 88. Okay, we get down here to 88. It is literally, this is the 2023 edition right here. There's literally no difference. Okay, it only change really is the table. Again, this is now 12088 versus 22088. Other than that, same principles apply. Same note. Nothing. And here you go. So we do have something under the enhanced. So here you go. A new restaurant, all electric. Great. I love when Link does this. New all arrested is total connected load of 348 kVA. All right. It's a 208Y120. Calculated the demand load using table 220.88, or we call demand or calculated load essentially is the same thing. Why? Because they're all resulting in having to apply some type of demand or something that's going to change from the connected load to now what we call a calculated load, that type of thing. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, you could call a lot, making sure they do stuff or checking to make sure. But typically when I saw the restaurants in the optional method, they had already taken the actual output of the luminaires at their value. So they took them at whatever the wattage was, regardless of what the lamping was. So they had a lighting schedule, right? And they took everything from the lighting schedule, and that was submitted and added in 100%. Didn't demand anything into it. They added everything up. All of the not the lamping wattage, but the maximum wattage rating of the luminaire itself. They had already added everything together, that type of thing. All right, so where do we at here? So it says calculate the demand using table when determining the size of the surface central conductors and the maximum size overcurrent device for the service. Okay, great little exercise. Also great that Link has this. I do not think there isn't anything in Informative Annex D for those that are in an exam. You're like, oh crap, because you can't use the handbook, and typically you can't, and Link you can't use. So you can't go run into Informative Annex D for this. So probably on most of your exams, just apply it the same way that I told you, and you're going to be fine. But let's look at it here. It probably would be continuous, but again, under the optional method, it's taking them at their full value, the full output. So it's just optional is just another way of calculating it, right? And think about this, David. When we do a lot of the calculations under, for example, standard methods or the part 3 methods, a lot of the things we don't carry over anyway. And so the optional is just a way of just taking, and it's applying such a demand to it anyway, that it's just taking everything. I mean, just the total everything into consideration. And it's also taking all of those luminaires. Now, that doesn't remove you from sizing those branch circuits to lighting for continuous loads and things like that. Remember, totally different thing. It's kind of an example of how we do a water heater, just an example. We size it for continuous load, but when we do the load for the service, we don't size it that way. So same concept, and there's such a generous demand factor, and the loads are so high that the optional method just says, look, just take every load at its total value, everything, and add it together. Okay, so we're not in a position, I think, and I'm with you, David. We're not in a position to speculate because we know continuous loads at the end of the day, most of the time, don't get transferred over into the service calculations for the most part, right? Another example with EV. EV, we size those branch circuit to 125%, right? But when we do the load calculation, we take what? We take the wattage, 7,200 minimum, or the nameplate of whatever it is. We don't do that on the load calculation for the service at a continuous load, right? So probably along those same lines, it's already figured in with the optional method and the diversity that's involved. Okay. All right. So let's look at it right here. Solution. Step 1, calculate the demand load. I got a damn bug flying around in here. Where did that coming from? All right. So here we were at, remember it was 348. Okay. So it says 50% of the amount that's over 325 plus the 172.5. So we kind of did this, right? What's up, Frank? Glad to have you here. Better late than never, bro. All right, so 50% of the amount over plus. So in this case, 348 minus the 325 in this example, okay, plus 172.5 equals 184 kVA. Now, I hate when they do it like this because I like to see this. You with me? So, for example, for me, I would do 348 minus 325, and that is 23. Okay. So 23 divided by 2 is 11.5 plus 172.5 equals 184. So I like to see it. That's what they mean, but you know me, we like to see it. Okay. All right. Now, that was step 1. Next is sizing the service. Okay, well, sizing the service. So kVA, that's the demand. That's what we just calculated out in this example, 184 times 1,000. We get it back to the full amount. That's fine, but we know that it's 184 184,000 VA. We know what it is. So here it is 184 times 1,000. Okay, we'll just do that on the calculator since that's the way they do it. 184 times 1,000. Again, we already knew was 184,000. Skip a step there if you want. And then, of course, down here, it is 208, okay? And we have the square root of 3. So it's 208 times 1.732. So 208 times 1.732. And that is 360.256 if you want to carry it all the way out, okay? So basically, we're doing 184,000 divided by 360.256, and that is 510.7, and that's going to be rounded to 511. Whoop, whoop. All right. So that's what we'll be doing. So now we go and determine the size of the overcurrent protected device. Well, determine the size of the overcurrent device, the next standard size permitted. Why? Because we're not over 800 amps, right? We're not supplying branch circuits to receptacles, right? So we get to use the allowance in 240.4b, which means that we can go up to the next standard size, right? Now, remember, our conductors have to be able to carry the load that we calculated out. That's a given. But we can still protect those conductors by going to the next standard size. Now, does anybody know when you can't do the next size up? When it comes to not the branch circuit part, but when it comes to the ampacity. What's the trigger ampacity? When it's over a certain ampacity, then we can't use the next size up rule that's in 240.4b. Does anybody know? This is your chance to shine in the chat, folks. Let me know. There's this magical number in amps, which as long as you don't go over it, right? As long as you don't go over it, then you can use the next size up rule and still protect it, okay? Maybe there's a delay on this chat. What's up? It's Wednesday, folks. It's coffee hour. We do this once a week. This is your time to shine. Join in. All right, nobody's commenting. Okay, so you remember what it says in 240.4b? As long as it's not over 800 amps. If it's over 800 amps, then the next size up doesn't work, okay? So if it is not over 800 amps, then we're allowed to use 240.4b, and we can go to the next standard size overcurrent device. And the standard overcurrent devices are listed in 240.6a. There's a little table there, okay? You with me? All right. So in this case, there isn't an overcurrent device that's rated for 511 amps. So the next standard size is 600, right? So that's why you can have a 600 amp overcurrent device. Now, determine the minimum conductor size from table 31016. The minimum copper conductor size using the 75 degrees C, okay, column, is a single 900 AWG, which has an ampacity of 520. And the next down, and this is another important thing, when you get something, and people ask me, when do I know how to parallel? Right? When do I do paralleling? Always look at what it would be for a single conductor. And reality is nobody wants to run 900s. Okay? Nobody wants to try to bend it. Nobody wants to try to do that. It's just not going to work. So the first thing you do in the order of succession is to go and see what it would be for parallel, means running 2 sets. See what sizes it would be then. If it's still very large, then you go to 3 sets. But you always go from the single to 2, and then to 3, then to 4, and see what is manageable, okay? And also on an exam, you want to go to the best plausible answer, okay? So, well, 900s are not advisable to do. You would go to the next alternative, which would be, okay, 2 sets, and see what the conductor sizing would be, right? That's what it would be, okay? So in this scenario, a 900 AWG is not going to be manageable. Ain't no damn way I'm running a 900. It's just not. Just to get me 520 amps, I don't think we'd get that in a raceway anyway, Okay. I mean, it's just crazy. All right. So I'm going to go to two sets and see what I need. So parallel conductors, such as two 300 copper, allowable ampacity is 282 each. Running them in parallel, following all the rules in 310.10, paralleling rules. Then I'm going to have 282. Hold on for a second. I'm going to lose TikTok. All right, so 285. So we're going to do 285 times 2, 570. Okay. Now 570 can most certainly handle the calculated load, which was 511. Okay. So for me, I'm going to run two 300s. Now, somebody might say to me, well, Paul, what about two 250s? All right. So that gives us a purpose opportunity to go down and look and see what it would be in 31016. And we go down here, and we're going to be under the 75. Okay. Why? Because it's over 100 amps, and the conductors are larger than 1 gauge. Okay. So we don't even have to look at terminations because there's no way they would be 60 in this scenario. All right. I mean, little common sense has got to kick in somewhere, right? All right. So it says 300s. Okay. Well, what about 250s? Okay. Well, let's see here. So 255 plus 255 is 510. Womp, womp, womp. We needed 511. Oh, we were so freaking close. But as a wiring cable guy, you had to jump up to 300s. Whoop, whoop. Papa's getting a commission this week. I'm just saying. So that was a neat one where it was right at the threshold, right, of the calculation. It makes sense? So that was a good example of how we sized it all the way down. And hopefully your engineers do that, but watch out. David's out there looking at you, engineers down there in Florida. Watch it. He's got his eye on you. I'm just saying. All right. Let's go over to the wheel and do some giveaways. Again, the drawing's coming close here in the next week or two. So, and we'll get that. Let's do some here. And then after this, I will show you what has changed on our website and how you can participate and join in. So you want to hang on for that. Yep, who wants to run a third raceway, David? You can get away with 2? Shoot, I'm going to run 2. Could you go to 3? Yep. Could you go to 4? Yep. Could you go to 5? Yep, you could if you wanted. Okay. But on an exam, they always want you to go to the best plausible answer. So they might give you a bunch of different options. And trust me, the ones they give you are probably going to be wrong, and there's going to be one right one, that type of scenario. But yes, you could do it 3 sets if you want, but that's just an additional raceway. That's just, now you'd have to see is a difference in conductor size from 2-aught to 300, that type of thing, money wise. You know what I'm saying? You could parallel it out again. Following all your paralleling rules, like I said, in 310.10, but you have different options. All right, so David A., Slate Coasters. All right, David, you're in the drawing for the David A. for the coasters. Congratulations. Hopefully you'll win those. Let's spin again. And then I want y'all to hang around because I want to show you how you can get involved and let you see what our new forum looks like. You all need to join it. If you already are registered on our website, you can log in. You don't have to sign. Well, ask for that, and I gave you that. So Douglas Webb, you're in the drawing. Oh, instant win. All right, Douglas. So if you already have an account on fasttracksystem.com, send us at winner@fasttracksystem.com. Send us an email. Let us know what your username is. And we will put the 2023 NEC exam prep. There's like 25 question database. We'll put that in your profile for you. Okay. Let's see. Questions. Instant. Okay. Next, let's spin again. If you're over on TikTok, you got to join us to spin the win. You got to come over and join us over in the live feed. Been selling those things like crazy. We put your QR code to whatever you want us to put it to on those things. They have been selling like crazy on the website. And we had them at the Nika show, and people were coming up to me asking me what they were. And so I let them scan it, and that sent them to my link tree. So that was pretty cool. So you're in the drawing for that, Santana. Alberto V, you're in the drawing for a VD card. Okay. It's not what you think. It is one of our hard metal voltage drop cards. Cool. And we give you the formulas, length, all this type of stuff. Everything is on this card. No other card like it. There's other people that sell them out there, but they're the flimsy stuff like this, the ones that they bend if they're in your pocket or they wear away easy. Not these suckers. These suckers are thick as a credit card. Okay. And let's see. Leo says you can do as many parallels as long as the ground is not bigger than the feeder itself. So you can do as many parallels as you want. Remember that the conductors can't be smaller than 1 aught when it comes to paralleling. So again, there's what's called a diminishing factor. Whereas, you could still do a bunch of 1 aughts and add them up, and that might be okay. But again, there is a point where it becomes moot to do so in money-wise. Now, as far as the National Electrical Code goes, up until the 2026 edition, 2023, basically your equipment ground may be larger than the ungrounded conductors because you take all the parallel sets and add them together and treat them as a conductor. But in the 2026 edition, that will change, and it never has to be larger than the largest ungrounded conductor in each raceway. But that's in the 2026. That's when that changes. Up until now, I'm a firm believer that is not what the code says. That type of thing. Okay? All right. Let's go take a look real quick at the website. So we're going to transition. Okay, folks, this is the frontal page on our website. So if you go to fasttracksystem.com, this is what you'll see. It's simple, it's clean interface. If you want to get to your courses or get a course, you just click on these links. We're very limited. We made sure we put up front everything that we had. Here's our thermal imaging course. It's available. Here's our thermal imaging cameras at a great below MSRP price. Here's our merch store and all this kind. Here's your courses for post-licensing. Here's our Fast Tracks cards. Here's our databases. But here's up here. You see this here? And you can get in. And if you want to go to the regular website, you can go right here. I'll show you. You click on that, and that takes you to our normal website, okay, that you're used to seeing. Okay, let's take you back real quick. All right, now, and if you want to go right to the email page to send us an email, you can go right here, okay? But here's what I want to talk about. See this community forum? This is where every member that we have or every viewer should be coming here and clicking on this. All right, so this is what it looks like in our forum. You're going to see topics that are posted. For example, here's a topic about coffee hour, talking about what we're going to have. You'll see little messages from me, although you can come up here and post your own, but you have to join. Now, if you're already a Fast Track student, then you just simply click log in. Oh, by the way, you can be black or white, however you want it right here. Your choice. Over here is on a mobile device. This is your navigation right here. Okay. And in a desktop, you'll see across the top, it'll say spaces, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is log in. Okay. Right here. Unless you just want to read the stream. You can't vote on anything, can't vote on any of the polls, you can't answer any of the questions, that type of thing. You have to be logged in. Now, you can see it by the public, but you got to be logged in. So here, go right here, click log in. And if you're already a member of the Fast Tracks program or you registered on our website before, then you can use that same login information. No problem. I'm going to log in. Now, once you log in, the first thing you're going to see is this little welcome message right here. You can shut this down by hiding the banner if you don't want to see this. But what this is telling you to do is before you do anything, if you're on a mobile device, you need to come up here and you need to go to Spaces. Click Spaces. Here, you're going to see all of the forums that we've created. If you want to participate in all these, then you'll see right here, it'll say Join Now. Click it and join all of them. And that way, when you're in the main feed, like right here, that means when you type in something right here, like a topic in your discussion, you get to shortcut and pick whatever forum you want this to be in. If you just want it to be general for everybody to see, then you can choose right here where it says on my profile, or you can do it here in the general open discussion. If your question is about the 2026, 2023, 2020 NEC, then you can choose it. And whatever you type here and you choose that space, like I'll choose 2026, see that right here? Whatever you put in right here, you post it, it will be in that forum specifically. Okay, so that's why first thing you're going to do. Now, if you're on, let me show you real quick. If you're on a desktop, you'll see them up here. And the first thing you want to do once you log in is go to Spaces and make sure that you join every one of these groups that you want to be a part of. That way, they won't show up in your feed. Okay, they won't show up in your feed right here. They won't show up in here until you join them. Because what we don't want you to do is we just don't want people posting random stuff and it starts to get people off the topic because it's not in the correct forum. Now, over on the left, you can go right here and say hello. Let me go on and get this back down to mobile view real quick. Okay, so right here, if you click this, you can say hello. Let us know who you are, where you're from, a little bit about you. If you need customer support, you can go here. General discussion, you want to chat, do something about the NEC. Thermal imaging course, you want to make suggestions. Okay, so here's the one for coffee hour, folks, right here. If you want to continue a discussion, like you had a question on today's topic, you can go right here, after hours discussion, and you can go right here and post the title and your question or whatever you want to continue the discussion right here. You can add a picture, you can add a video from YouTube or whatever you've uploaded. You can do a poll, you can do an emoji. You can let everybody know that you posted something, so it sends everybody a message saying, hey, come and look at my post, that type of thing. You could even post something to be sent later if you want. But anyway, here's where you'd put your information and you post it, and it will be posted in this forum, which is the coffee hour after hour discussion. Now, if you just want to, for example, make a recommendation for a future show, then you can choose this one, and you click this. And here's where you can make a recommendation so you can get involved and post it right there. You don't even need to pick a topic. You just post it right there. You can select the topic right here and choose suggestion for a show if you want it to be more easily defined. But anyway, that's how you would do it. If you want to get back to it, you go back here and click the logo. And that'll take you back to the main feed. So watch this video, but after that, you can choose to hide the video. I'll just hide banner. And so if you want to just post right away, you can post right here, but you have to select which space. And if you don't see any spaces, that means you haven't joined any spaces. You can't have a conversation unless you join something. You get what I'm saying? All right, so that's how you select your spaces down here, wherever you want your post to go. If you just want it to be in the general discussion, maybe it's not electrical, it's just a what's up everybody, then you can choose general. Or you could choose on my profile and it'll show up in the feed of everybody's feed, that type of thing. Over here, you can see which topics are trending. And so this is where we're going to be posting updates and it's free to join. You just go up here. Also, here's something else that's neat. If you want to have a discussion, so check this out. So let's say I'm having a discussion in the 2023, okay? And I want to have a discussion. I can actually go over and actually chat in that discussion, right? I can have an ongoing chat about it, right? I can either post a comment, right, here, or I can go over here and I can chat, click chat, and it takes me into the chat, and I can have an active discussion with other people in real time right here. For example, and you can chat with other members. Up here is where you see your messages. If somebody leaves you a message, then you can chat right here. Let's say I wanted to have a chat with David. Now, I've been chatting with David. Okay, so you see where I posted an image or whatnot. But let's say I want to add a message. So I can go right here, see the plus. I come over here and I can choose any member I want. And let's say I want to chat with Brittany. I click Brittany and I can come down here and I can type a message. Hello, Brittany. Right here. And I can send it. And it will be waiting. And so when Brittany logs in, she will see it. Okay. So if I log out real quick, let me show you what it looks like. Let me go back to here. I'll go back to the forum. I'll log in. I'll log in as Brittany. I have her login information. Now watch. She hasn't completed her profile yet. You need to complete your profile so you'll get noticed. But you see up here this little notice? Click on it. And you see right here all the discussions, okay? Mentions, okay? All that stuff is right here. She can go to MySpace. Here's where you should go to add your background image. She doesn't have a background image in here, but she's only joined the general topic because that's all she really cares about. You can do an about you. You can have your profile. You can add your profile, add links to your social. Everything you want in here is all in here. She's got notification settings. She hasn't set anything up in here, okay? But she probably should do this. I'll do this for her so she'll log in later. Okay. And for those that asked, yep, she is back with us. So yes, she is back helping us, that type of thing. All right. So see how hers looks a little different, right? Because she's logged in. And then here's your notices over here. And you see all these little notices right here. She'll mark all red. And that'll disappear, right? So anyway, she can change the color right here. Change it back. She can go to the leaderboard. See who all the leaders are, posting wise. And you move up the leaderboard, the more you post, by the way. That type of thing. So anyway, that's everything that you can see here. And you see down here at the bottom, see this little button right here? This lets you know that I'd sent that text to her or that chat. So I click on it. And you see right here where it said, hey, Brittany, click on it. And there I said, hello, Brittany. And she can reply back to me. That's the instant message feature that's in here. Okay. All right. So I saw where people dropped off because they're not interested in the message board. I don't understand it for the life of me. To me, I think it's a great way to connect, a great way to post images, topics, but people seem to drop off. You know, they just don't want to be engaged anymore. So I don't really care. We've added it. We're going to be using it. If you want updates on shows and topics and things like that, that's where I'm posting. I'm not posting anymore on the Facebooks or any of those others. All of my updates are going to be over on our own forum. Like it or not, that's where they're going to be. All right. All right, folks. Hopefully you got something out of today's episode and enjoyed Coffee Hour. We'll see you next Wednesday. Till next time, stay safe. God bless.